Welcome.
To the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode 270 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. We're going to be hacking on Firefox stuff today. We're going to be answering questions from Need Infos and from the audience, and talk a little bit about what's going on in like whenever you land patches, that sort of thing. That's what we're doing today. Let me share my screen. Well, that's Wacky Morning DJ. Let me switch to the agenda. Right, today is November 17th, 2021. I'm just going to eat this carrot. Sorry, I've been holding this carrot for a couple seconds. I'm going to eat it. A reminder, sorry for talking with my mouth full with carrot. Hopefully the crunching is not distorting the signal too much. Man, I probably should have timed that better. Oh, man. Alright, let's try this again. November 17th, 2021. Episode 270. A reminder, no plan survives breakfast. Periodically, you eat a carrot at an inopportune time. And that's a metaphor for life. I scared Danny Collin. Am I too loud? Is it way too loud or something? Let me know if the levels are off. Hopefully it's not too loud or something. Right, no plan survives breakfast. Things could go wrong. My plan is to go through some Need Infos and talk about some stuff. But who knows what'll happen? Maybe a bug will land on our lap that we can start investigating. We're just kind of easy breezy walking through stuff, and if things get distracting, like if we get distracted by something, we might look into it. If we get blocked on something, we might move on to other stuff. There's just a vague plan of what's going on, but we might not stick to it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the agenda that we're looking at is something you have access to. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, check out the details page, or the details section over here. On YouTube, there'll be a link in the video description. And on Twitch, there is a link that is about to be dropped into the Twitch chat. This one right here. Here we go. Agenda. Boom. Right. And with regards to the Twitch chat, I should mention that there's this bridge that I have set up that tries to bridge the Matrix chat channel and Twitch, and it's currently only working one way. So right now, Matrix users, whenever you speak, the Twitch channel sees it, but whenever the Twitch channel folk speak, whenever people in the Twitch chat speak, it's not sent over to Matrix. So that's copying from Twitch for the Matrix only folks. Yeah, thank you very much, Dennis, for doing that. Yeah, this is a technical limitation. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I've been trying to debug it because this was a problem last week as well. I haven't really figured it out yet. But it seems like what I've narrowed it down to is that for some reason the Matter Bridge system that I'm using isn't relaying Twitch messages, which are really just IRC messages, to Matrix. And it seems specific for that particular pair. So Twitch to Matrix. Like I can send messages to Twitch and I can send messages to Matrix from different platforms, different chat platforms. But for some reason, Twitch going to Matrix is not working, and I have not figured it out yet. But hopefully soon. That's the first thing. And the second thing I wanted to mention, there are times whenever people are like, hey, I want to support Firefox development. What can I do? You know, and maybe they realize I think I mentioned this last time that like donations to the foundation, while perfectly like righteous, perfectly good, they don't directly go to Firefox desktop development because the Mozilla Foundation, which accepts donations, does different work from the Mozilla Corporation, which works on products like Firefox and like Firefox for Android and like hubs and the VPN and all those sorts of things. Like that's all in the domain of products. That's all the domain of the Mozilla Corporation, which does not receive donations. So if you are interested in funding, like more directly funding desktop development, if you want to like monetarily support Firefox desktop development, there's a way to do it, and that is to send to purchase some of our services. And a new one just went out. I talked about VPN last week. This is a plug. I'm not getting I wasn't asked to do this. This isn't like a sponsored video or something, but This just came out yesterday, and I thought the people on this call, or not on this call, people watching the stream might be interested. So there's a service that we have called Relay. Maybe you've heard about it. Let me just put a link here. Relay. You can go to relay.firefox.com, and what it is basically an email bouncing tool, where, or maybe there's more precise language. It's like a forwarding service for email. So whenever you sign up for things, like especially during the holiday season, I'm doing this right now where I'm like doing a lot of online shopping, and I'm trying to do a lot of online shopping with smaller vendors and smaller stores, local stores in Toronto in the area. And so they will usually ask for my email address as part of like I have to create an account with them or something. And it is handing out this email address gets riskier and riskier the more you do it, because periodically, like some of these databases with users in them, like user email addresses, can get compromised, or they might get sold, or this company might get bought by someone, or the company might just start sending you spam on their own, or abusing your email address in a way that you don't want. Like sometimes it's nice to be able to sever that connection whenever you're done with some service that you signed up for with an email address, to just say, okay, we're done now, and I'm going to just like throw away the email address. And that's what you can do with Relay. It's basically like it allows you to create disposable email addresses. And you can do this right now for free. Like there's a free version of Relay, and you can get it. You can get this optional browser extension if you want, which makes it a lot easier to use it, because it puts like if I find an email field, let me show you an example, because I've got the add-on installed. If I go to like where would I, if I just go to Gmail, where I think it'll ask for your email address. Oh, it doesn't seem to work on this one. Let me find a simpler form, like not a sign-in form. How about a new email? Let's go to a store of some kind. Like in Toronto, we have the Book City store. And if I want to create an account, I'm a big fan of this store. And if I want to create an account, I could sign up. Now, it looks like it's actually, is it not? Oh, you know what? Because I'm in a private browsing window. That's why it doesn't work. All right, let's try doing that over here in a normal browsing window. Still doesn't work. Do I not have the Relay add-on enabled? This is a very embarrassing demo. Hang on a second. Do I not have Relay? Firefox. Where is it? Relay. Private Relay. Private. No, that's private network. Private Relay. Relay is enabled. I don't know why it's not showing up in here. Maybe sorry, worst demo ever. But basically there's supposed to be this little thing that shows up inside of the email address. And maybe it's currently broken in nightly. I don't know. But if you click on it, it allows you to quickly and easily create a disposable email address if you really want one. And you don't have to use the web extension. You don't have to use the add-on. You can just create the address in the interface, in the Relay interface, the website here. You can create one, and that's for free. You can get up to 5 of them for free, and you can throw them away whenever you're done with them. You just delete them and then create another one, up to 5, and then you can delete those 5 and create another 5, etc., etc. So that's a nice way of sort of creating these disposable identities. Now, if you decide that that's useful to you, maybe you want a little bit more, and you want to also support the development of like Firefox related products, then for right now there's like this it's a limited time only deal. I don't know actually how long this runs for. I'm not really privy to the timing or the sort of the decisions on how long it goes or anything like that, but for now it is 99 cents. It's basically $1 per month. It's also €1 per month, depending on if you use the euro, but otherwise it's like $1 per month USD to sign up, and that gives you unlimited email aliases. And of course you can still use the browser extension, but the part that I'm really excited about, because the email addresses that it generates are usually pretty they're very obfuscated. Like they'll look like does this page show you an example? It'll look kind of like what is being illustrated back here, like this series of letters and numbers followed by like @mosmail.com. Like it's a real sort of hard to remember, random series of characters. And that's fine, you know, if you're just doing a one and done, but maybe you're trying to really manage a particular disposable identity, or you want to map a you want to map a particular store to an identity or something. Like if I want a Book City email address, then I could define my own custom domain. So I could choose like I don't know, what's a good one, like mikeintoronto.mosmail.com. I can choose that, and then I get to choose what I put over here. Like I can choose to say Book City at mikeintoronto.mosmail.com, and that can be the alias. And that's really handy, and I can dispose of that when I'm done with it. Like if, for example, Book City decide they shut down, or I don't want their services anymore, or something like that, God forbid, I really love Book City, then I can revoke that email address easily. And apparently with this, you can also reply to forwarded emails. I've never done that before. I've never had occasion to do it, because usually the emails I get from these services that I sign up for with the relay service, it's usually just like I need the confirmation email, and that's it. And then I throw the email address away. But this might be handy for some of you. So for now, for 99 cents, aka $1, or 1 EUD, is that what it's called? No, what's the EUR? €1 per month. You can sign up for Firefox Premium Relay, and that is a good way of supporting Firefox and its products. Okay, that is my commercial. Thank you for listening to my commercial. Let's move on. Going through some neat infos. That's what I'm hoping to do today. And actually what's really interesting is one of these neat infos, I know for a fact, is from Den Shub, who is in Matrix right now. So you're going to watch me go through your neat info right now. And I hope I get to answer the question that you care about. Let's actually do that one first. Sorry, I decided to eat another carrot. All right. So this is a web compatibility. Oh man, stuck in my throat. Sorry. This is in the web compatibility product, and in what's called the interventions. Like this is basically the web compat system add-on component on Mac OS, and the summary is turning on Slack Huddles creates an XML error warning. I'm not actually familiar with Slack Huddles, but we'll see what this is all about. And it's currently assigned to Den Shub, and this was filed 13 days ago. So if you go into Mac OS, on your Mac OS Catalina, if you have a device like that, I presume that's not like necessarily a requirement. I mean, that's just what the reporter Benson Wong was using, but let's see. Toggle Slack Huddle on. Now, I don't know what that is, but I'm presuming it's some sort of like chat system. Let's actually look that, or like video conferencing system. Solve problems aloud with Slack Huddles. 6 ways to recreate quick informal office discussions in a work from anywhere world. Slack Huddles are a lightweight audio first way to communicate inside the Slack channel and direct message. So like, okay, when the huddle is open, any member of the channel or DM can come and go as they please. So basically it's like a voice channel inside a channel where you can like quickly chat with one another verbally. I you know, they kind of have like, they have that with Discord, those like voice specific channels, I think. That's my interpretation of what's going on. I'm seeing some chatter from Den Shub here saying, you almost pinged me about this yesterday, and that's the thingy in the Slack UI in the bottom left corner, like an on-demand voice chat room they can use in channels. Right, okay, makes sense. When you use it, Firefox asks for device permissions, so they're doing this in the browser. I allow the access to a Yamaha USB speakerphone, and then an arrow window pops up in the top left-hand corner of the screen. The window cannot be dragged or closed. The window goes away when Huddles is disabled. Okay. And the Huddle feature does work, as I was able to have a conversation. I don't see any global WebRC indicator. If I turn on the WebRC global mute toggles, I do see the global indicator, but I don't see the error message. You recently worked on the file that has an error here. Do you know what might be causing this? Or if there is another indicator that's not enabled by default? No, this is the current WebRTC indicator, and we actually open that window even if it's not visible, because for viewers from like not the previous stream but the stream before, we actually worked with that. We worked with that window because it's the one that manages the icons in the menu bar when you're sharing. So for example, if I go to WebRTC experiment, here, let's do this. And let's share something. Screen sharing. Let's just basic get user media. Let's open the camera. I'm going to use my FaceTime camera so you can see me at a different angle. Okay, so this little guy here is opening because you see my green screen. Hey, this little guy here is a toggle that allows you to mute and unmute the camera. You know, hopefully that didn't break OBS. No, good. Mute and unmute the camera in the browser, and it's this capability is not enabled by default. That's actually an experimental capability that you can enable if you go to About Preferences. And under Nightly Experiments, choose the WebRTC Global Mute toggles. Because what it allows you to do is just, it's like a global cutoff switch to your camera when it's being shared in the browser. And there's ones for your microphone as well. And you can move this little window around, you can minimize it, and you can, like, if you're sharing your display, it will tell you, and you can quickly stop sharing your display and that sort of thing. But when this toggle is not available, when it's hidden by default, like whenever the experiment is off, we still actually use that window because it's used to manage this menu item right up here, which allows you to control the sharing of the camera. I'm trying to remember what this does. Yeah, so it allows you to like revoke the permission or something. So I'm gonna close this, and we're gonna go back to the bug. Now, this error that we're looking at here is what we would call the yellow screen of death. And this thing has... this is interesting because in this particular case, this yellow screen of death is less about DTDs, which normally when we see a yellow screen of death, it's because it's not being translated properly. It's using like old school DTD stuff, and maybe the user has a different language pack installed or something. But this is a case where it's actually not able to find the root element of the indicator. And this actually reminds me of, I've seen this error before. I think I've seen this error before in bugs. Like someone's been talking about this. And so I'm going to dig through my email. I'm not going to do that on screen, but I'm going to see if I can find the bug where this is being referred to, because I have a feeling this is a dupe. So let's see here. Just give me a quick second. I know this isn't very exciting, but I don't want to show you my email address. One second. You are leaking the world. It's like WebRTC indicator, and ZB was chatting to me about this. Are there bugs? Where are the bugs? Broken UI. WebRTC. The most common XHTML file loaded is these. So it's like known. It's one of the more frequent ones, but the most frequent one is apparently 70. It's the network error page. And does it say why it's not loading? Okay, I can't find the associated bug, but this looks like it's less about the WebRTC indicator itself and more about the XML parser having a hard time pulling the document out of the omni.ja properly. I think there's a dupe of this bug somewhere, but I can't remember where it is. ZB, do you remember if there's a dupe of this somewhere? I swear we've talked about this before. Okay, redirect to ZB, aka Gandalf. ZB. Zbrand. There we go. I don't know why that wasn't matching before. Okay, so I've redirected the info, and hopefully ZB is able to answer your question, Den Chub. Sorry, I wasn't able to be a little more directly helpful, but ZB is definitely the right person to talk to about this. The yellow screen of death is kind of his domain, and I apologize. This is 13 days ago. It's 2 weeks. I almost 2 weeks. I failed to respond to this, so I'm glad I got to it, but I'm sorry it took so long. All right, next up. String length is too short and down. Oh, this is a closed bug. This is a bug that I closed 3 months ago. Oh, this is an uplift request. So someone asked whether or not we should request uplift for this patch, because what it does is, what does this patch do? Well, it does change a kind of a string. This is a special kind of string that we use where we allow localizers to set a particular width on something. In this case, the downloads panel. They set the minimum width. And I've got like a min width here. And the items have a width here. And let's see. Normally an uplift with a string change would not be approved, but we would need to bump Elton and change sets. Just an extra step to be mindful of if we do. Okay. I think we can request uplift for this. Let's quickly note the string that was changed. So it was download panel list.style was removed and replaced with download, what did I call it? Download panel items style. Is not a sec high or critical bug, but this makes it easier for users on non-ENUS locales to see more information about ongoing downloads. User impact: if declined, certain locales will find that the downloads panel is too narrow to display enough information about ongoing or completed downloads. And the fix landed in version 93. So it's already out there. This is a low risk patch. This is a style only patch. This is mainly a style only patch. And it's been out in the wild now for, like, how long has it been since Firefox 93 has been out? Release calendar. Firefox 93 was released back in October, over a month now. Over a month. It's been out in the wild now on the release channel for over a month. So this should be fairly stable. So this should be fairly safe to take. Presuming it applies cleanly. All right. Request. There we go. And the last Need info is something I set for myself, actually. I set this need info on myself because there's a patch. So this is a bug that was filed 7 years ago. About there's this little notification bar that will open up on Firefox if you haven't used Firefox in a while. I'm pretty sure it's still there. Let's actually double check that it's still there. I don't think we removed it. Okay, here. I think we can find the source code for it. Profile age. No? Where is this notification bar? Reset profile notification. Do we show that? Is that what it's called? The reset unused profile, reset uninstalled message. Is there another place where we would append notify unsigned add-ons? What was this one? It was unused. If not, disable reset prompt. What is this thing? Reset profile. What does it mean whenever it's unused? What is this message? Reset unused profile. Looks like you haven't started X in a while. Do you want to clean it up? Right. And it sounds like the way that we're calculating whether or not to do this is by looking at the... Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I'm getting a phone call from Book City, everybody. Hang on, I'm gonna answer this, but I'm gonna mute. Just 1 second. Actually, I don't know how to mute. Oh, I missed the call. I didn't really want... I have a feeling there's a delivery available for me from Book City. I'm gonna have to call them back. I didn't know how to mute my microphone midstream. I should probably have a cutoff switch somewhere for safety. Okay. It looks like the way we calculate the last time the profile was in use was by looking at the replaced lock time. And is that the case? Like, has this changed recently? Is that always how this has worked? Because this patch was written 5 years ago. And the reason that I'm looking is because this patch, I set a need info on myself because I want to know whether or not it's possible that A, this is still a bug, and B, we can bring this patch back from the dead. Because that might be useful. So let me take a look and see the version that this patch was written against. There'll be a line on like on first window loaded. Just gotta wait for Mercurial to get a sense of it. No? Did I? Oh, here. Sorry, I was in the wrong window. On first window loaded, when do we do it? Track, slow startup, profile, reset interval. We get the last modified time on the profiles ini. So this has actually changed since then. So we used to look at the last modified time on the profiles.ini file, but now what we're doing is we are looking at the replaced lock time of app info. So let's see when this change occurred, because that might invalidate this entire patch. Offer to reset a user's profile was last used more than 2 months ago. Replaced, but what? Replaced lock time. Oh, no, it was always using replaced lock time. But what we did was we took the maximum of the last modified time and replaced lock time of app info. And what replaced lock time does, let's just double check what this is. Replace lock time. And that's on app info. What it does is it gets replaced lock time on the profile. Which gets, there's this thing called mlock, get replaced lock time. Is there a documentation of this inside here? The timestamp of an existing profile lock at lock time. So the time, like, of acquiring the lock. So the problem is that the last use, if we look at the timestamp of an existing profile lock at the time of locking it. So it was like if we open up the browser and we look at the time that this is basically the last lock time. And if the browser session was open for a long time, like it's almost like what we want is not the replaced lock time, but like when the lock was released last time. That's really what we want. The timestamp of an existing profile lock at lock time. What I want to know is like what was the release of the lock? And what is the original patch trying to do? This patch switches to using the last modified time of the profiles.ini file to check the last Firefox use time. So instead of using, oh, I see. Instead of just using the replace lock time, get the profiles anytime and use that. Otherwise, use the replace lock time. So fall back. We determine the last use time by profile locks. Replace lock time and profiles any last modified time is for the backwards compatibility. Only using replace lock time and not touching such and such. Hence, would be much older than the 60 days threshold. In this case, we would misjudge lots of daily active users as inactive users if only considered the last modified time. What? So here we take the newer time as the last use time. I almost feel like we have this information. Like, shouldn't there be information about the like when the last session ended? Like that to me is maybe. Wouldn't that be some sort of in here? When was the time the session ended? Telemetry session. That's a thing that exists, right? Oh, last shutdown duration. Failed profile lock count. Do we have things like when the last shutdown was? Histograms. Oh. Suspend since process start. This is kind of in the area of it. Because that's what we want. We want the time of last shutdown. Last shutdown. Is there anything out there that would be called that? Last shutdown time. Oh, that's the duration. Get last shutdown duration. Yeah. That's just how long it lasted. Not the actual timestamp of it. The last shutdown time. Hang on a second. We can check this out. If I go to services.telemetry, last shutdown duration. Yeah, it's just how much time it took, not when it was. When do we write last shutdown time? Right here. Read last shutdown duration at the shutdown time file name. So we write how long it took to shut down into a file. What is that file name? Path char pointer. What is that file name? How do we... Oh, we're constructed with this thing, fetch telemetry data, and the shutdown time file name is passed as the first argument. So shutdown time file name here is the, okay, telemetry.shutdown time. Okay. Which is presumably how long it took to shut down. What would be pretty cool is if we could also get the timestamp, not just the duration, but if we could write to this file the timestamp. Okay, what's in this file actually though? We get the file name, and then we fetch the data. And we run this, and we read it, and the things that we pull out of it are, we open this up and we collect some information. It's just the time. And then we close the file. When do we write this? Write last. Who writes this file? Who writes this file? One way of finding that out is looking at the patch that first landed this. Failed log attempts. Shutdown time. So it seems pretty old. But yeah, who writes this? Browser timings. The time in milliseconds it took to complete the last shutdown. On the next tab, this is loaded and recorded. It's like I feel like this is the sort of information that we should write to telemetry, but I should probably double check with our data peers. Now, why did this patch not land? That's my other question. This is an old Moz review patch. There were a bunch of comments in here from Matt N 5 years ago, asking for documentation, suggesting you use idle dispatch. We should use idle daily rather than using our own timer. Consistency. This patch using profile exists 3 times. Use get profiles in a lazy getter. This should be calling a helper. Keep these alphabetical. Please use CC and CI. And then it just didn't get touched. So I think the technique here might be salvageable, but we might want to do something better. The technique that the original patch was using here might still be salvageable. How do you spell salvageable? But we might be able to build on top of something more robust. We already record how long it took to do our telemetry system. Already records how long it took to do a shutdown. Into a separate file that's then read upon subsequent startup. Could we augment that to also include the timestamp of the last shutdown and use that to calculate the delta? Would recording, so maybe I'll say maybe we could augment that to also include the timestamp and use that to calculate the delta. Hey, Chutton, do you think the data stewards would be opposed to adding the last shutdown time to NSI telemetry? Or there's a new thing that we're supposed to be using, that's not telemetry, it's called Glean. And is there a web IDL for Glean? Yeah. Glean. And the way that we add like metrics for Glean. Metrics.yaml. We could put it into like toolkit. Initialization. Flush durations. Perhaps we could put this inside of Glean. Do you think it would be opposed to adding to recording the last shutdown time in Glean somewhere? Request information from Chutton. Because if we can do that, then we can use that instead. And, you know, I think that would be a little bit more robust than trying to hack something together by looking at like touching files and looking at like their last use time. Okay, so need info passed along to Chutton, one of our data stewards. Okay, I think do need infos on. So the other thing I was thinking we might do today, I thought I'd go through some questions. So one of the things that I've been trying, I've considered answering and I hadn't had a chance of doing it yet, was talking about how patches go from being written to being in Firefox, start to finish. And I wanted to talk about that briefly because I've done this talk for a couple of new hires and new contributors who might not have a sense of the flow of like where changes go and how like how they're staged and the release cycle and all of that. So I thought I'd go through that, and hopefully that'll be interesting for you. So let me switch to camera 3 in my drawing tablet because I'm going to be doing some drawing. So 1 second here. Hopefully you can see this. Okay. All right. Let me just finish this carrot, have some tea, and then I'll start talking about this. Give me a quick sec. All right, let's do it. Okay, so where do I begin? Let's start with this line. And let's also pretend that you are the audience, you have interest in writing patches for Firefox. And so you have a computer and you might have cloned one of our repositories. Maybe you cloned here, I'm actually, no, I'll leave the camera where it is. Let's say you've cloned the Mozilla Unified repository that has the Firefox code in it. Maybe you use Git or Mercurial, it doesn't really matter. But you have a local copy of the repo. I'm going to call it MU for Mozilla Unified because I think that's the default name now of the repository. Maybe mine's called Mozilla Central because it's old school and I haven't cloned in a while. Yours might be called Unified. It might be called Central. It really doesn't matter. It's the repo, and it's your local clone of one that's on Mozilla's services, like Mozilla's infrastructure, and that's the copy of MU. This is like local, and then this is like Mozilla infrastructure above the line. Okay, so you clone the repository, and you work on a patch, and you write this really excellent patch. Here's your patch. It's patch.diff, and it's got like additions and subtractions and changes, and it's great. And so what happens after you write it is you have this tool that whenever you run, when you clone the repository, you're supposed to run this command called /mock bootstrap. My handwriting is not incredible, so you might not be able to read that very well. But mock bootstrap installs a number of things. One of the things I believe it installs is called mozfab. And if it doesn't install mozfab, it should. But you have this tool called mozfab locally. And what mozfab does is it allows you to take this patch and submit it. So it sends a copy of the patch up to a service called Fabricator. Fabricator is where we do our code review using a tool within Fabricator called Differential, but we just call it Fabricator because that's the only tool really that we use from it. So Differential. And this is where, comments happen, like maybe someone looks at your patch and has some ideas on ways you can improve it or change it or something. Maybe they request you add some tests. Who knows? Like a conversation about the patch ensues. And, feedback will go back and forth, and this patch might change over time. Like you might come back with some feedback, alter the patch, resubmit it to Fabricator, and it'll kind of do this like bounce back and forth a couple of times until you get approval. Like your reviewer says, I like it. This patch looks good. It's ready to land. And at that point, they will initiate a system called Lando. So Lando knows how to take your patch out of Fabricator and lands it into a fork of the Mozilla Central repository called AutoLand. So it takes it from Fabricator and just cherry picks it and like just grafts it on top of AutoLand and commits it to that repository. And what happens is, like, this happens a lot. Like, every patch that gets approved goes through AutoLand, or Lando picks it up and drops it on AutoLand. And it's pretty busy. Like, it's doing that all the time. If you go to Tree Herder, let me go back to my my screen here for a second. If you go to Tree Herder, you can see all the patches coming in. If we look at AutoLand here, like, all of these patches coming in, these are from today. Like, this one's from my colleague Heiss. And this one's from someone named, this one's from Emilio. And this one's from someone named S. Molnar. That's a backout. And another one from Emilio. And another one from Emilio. Emilio is very prolific today. Andre. And, like, each one of these is from today. They're just like, boop, boop, boop. Each approval goes landing. And goes in, Lando picks it up and drops into the repository. And all of these symbols over on this side, which is very confusing. Like, it's a lot of information. Very dense, but it's telling the sheriffs, and it's telling the people who landed these things how the patch is doing in our test automation. Because every patch that comes in, whenever it lands like this, it goes through a bunch of tests. We run all of our automated tests on every single one that comes in. And things might go orange like this. Things might break. And if that happens, then we'll back stuff out. And then that will green the tree up. And more things will land. And eventually, let me go back to this screen. Whoops, made it seem like things ended. Eventually, the sheriffs, so there's a character here. They've got a little sheriff's hat and a little badge. Maybe some boots. These are the tree sheriffs. Their job is to watch. They, like, keep their eyes on AutoLand using Tree Herder. And they, like, watch it. And at some point, they'll say, if things break, if the tests fail, like we saw in that example back there, we saw a couple of tests break and then a backout occurred. That red text showed a backout. Our sheriffs did that. When they saw, like, oh, tests are breaking, we're going to back out the offending patch because we know which one introduce those test failures. So they'll revert the patch on AutoLand and bounce back into the bug that the patch is associated with and say, like, hey, I had to back you out. You need to look at this again. So that might happen to you. Like, you might get backed out by a sheriff, and then you're back at the differential stage, and you might have to do some more, or the fabricator stage. You might have to do some more revisions to figure stuff out. But suppose it landed and everything was fine. None of the tests failed. All is well. Then, twice a day, the sheriffs will find a point in time where they go, look, the tree is in pretty good shape. Everything's green. It looks green. What we're going to do is we're going to merge AutoLand back into Mozilla Unified, aka Mozilla Central. Like, they'll say, like, this is a pretty good snapshot of what's going on. Everything's green. We'll merge it back. And the advantage of that is that people who clone the repository, you generally, like, you're almost guaranteed to have a working version of the browser, like something that has passed all of the tests, because it only merges over whenever the sheriffs are like, it looks good, the tests are all passing, okay, merge to Central. And so, anything in Central is usually, it's building properly and it's passing all of the tests. That's why it's in Central. It periodically will happen. Something will get into Central that's breaking something, and then it'll just get backed out of Central. And then maybe nightlies will get spun out. Because Central is where nightlies come from, just so we're clear. Twice a day, nightlies get created from whatever is in this repository. So nightly is a version of the browser that's just the bleeding edge, like the most recent stuff in the repository. And yeah, twice a day. I'm using Nightly right now. That's this version of the browser. And when was it built? It was built today, this morning probably. And I'll probably get another update later today because it's twice a day that the builds get created based on whatever's in Central. Okay, so far so good. So your patch, in this story, your patch went through code review, it passed continuous integration, it got merged to Central. At that point, your bug is usually closed. Like that's what the sheriffs who did the landing from AutoLand to Mozilla Central / Mozilla Unify. I'm just going to call it Central because that's what I'm used to calling it. But even though the repository as a whole might be called Unified, the branch that we're talking about is called Central. And Central is the equivalent of Nightly, I guess, what Nightly is built from. But Central is our bleeding edge branch of the repository. And whenever they do that merge from AutoLand to Central, that's when they close the bug. They'll say, oh, okay, you passed continuous integration. We've merged to Central. We have the script that runs that closes all of the bugs that are associated with the patches that went into Central. And so that's why you might find, for example, that if you're watching a bunch of components in Bugzilla, a bunch of stuff will get closed at the same time. And that's because the script runs after the merge, and like a bunch of Bugzilla bugs will get closed at the same time after the merge occurs. Okay, so far so good. Now your patch is in Nightly and people are using it. Okay, here's the next thing to know. There are 2 more repositories. There's one called Beta, Mozilla Beta, and there's one called Release. There's another one called ESR. We're not going to talk about ESR today. That's too complicated. Or just it muddies the water. But let's talk about Beta and Release. So every 4 weeks, the trains, man, my handwriting is just the worst today. Every 4 weeks, the trains leave the station. We use this sort of metaphor of trains to describe... What is up with my handwriting? I feel like it's really regressed. Weeks. Weeks. You know what it is? I think I've got this like brush stabilizer on. Do I have brush? Yeah, I've got... Okay, turn the brush stabilizer off. I got a feeling it's like making my handwriting look worse than it's supposed to be. Let's just try that again. 4. There we go. So much better. 4 weeks. Okay. So every 4 weeks, we do a release of Firefox. Maybe you've noticed. It's every month or so a new release of Firefox comes out. And what happens is, a long time ago, someone took a branch, they forked Mozilla Central, and they created 2 forks, one called Beta and one called Release. And then after some time of things baking in Mozilla Central, the changes in here were then merged into Beta. And then after some time, the changes in Beta, after they've been used by more people, are merged into to Release. So hang on, I don't think I've done a very good job of explaining what's going on here. I've got distracted by trying to explain how these things got set up in the past. So let me go back for a second. We've got these 3 repositories, and they all have similar ancestry. And you can almost think of them as branches. Like if you were using Git for this whole mechanism, like we're using individual repositories. If this was being managed with Git, these would probably be individual branches off of like a shared ancestry. And these would be long-lived branches that will periodically merge into from the central branch or the main branch. That's what we call, like, you can think of central as like main. That is the equivalent. Main, or what used to be called master. So every 4 weeks, whatever is in Beta that is not already in Release is merged over to Release. Similarly, every 4 weeks after that merge occurs, everything that's not in Beta that's in Central is merged into Beta. So that's what we mean by the trains leaving the station. Beta merges to Release, and then Central merges to Beta. And then the version numbers are also incremented. So if this was 93 before, then after the merge occurs, if this was 93, then the train leaves the station. Boop, 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 choo, choo. Here, let's put the train. Choo, choo. Train leaves the station. And the version number gets bumped to 94 after this merge occurs. And that's what eventually goes out to users. Now, we do a release candidate. If this stuff's like, our QA people do like a really close look at the build, and we make sure that it's up to our standards, and we pass a bunch of like automated and manual testing. And then we start doing a slow rollout to our release population. And then, same thing. There's a train that leaves from Central. Sorry, the train's going the other way here. Choo choo, it's going this way. Train's going this way. And this is from everything from Central goes to Beta. And the reason why we have this Beta channel, like, this is for what we call stabilization or bake time. That's another term for it, where fewer changes are allowed to land in Beta. After this uplift occurs, this merge or uplift is what we call it, then there's 4 weeks of bake time where changes that land in Beta, there's a much higher bar to land changes in there. So if, for example, we find out that there's something that's crashing in Beta, we'll find the regressor and we'll just back it out, and we'll fix Beta up. And we've got 4 weeks to get it in good shape. But we won't land like new features in Beta, or we're really discouraged from doing it. The bar is very high, because that 4 weeks of time is for finding bugs and turning stuff off if things are not ready, and repairing any sort of cruft. Like, Central is where you can do a little more experimental stuff, maybe half-baked stuff that's kind of like half on, half off. You can do your development there, but as soon as it's in Beta and it's on, you are exposed to like an order of magnitude more users, and lots of people are going to be testing it, and it better be ready, and it better be more reflective of what's going into release, because that's what Beta is for giving what's eventually going into release some solid testing by real users. And we look at the telemetry data, and we look at the crash reporting to make sure that we haven't somehow regressed performance, we haven't somehow regressed stability, and we look at Bugzilla very closely. We also look at our social media and support channels, Sumo, ideas.mozilla.org, Twitter, Facebook. Like, all of the channels are watched to see, like, okay, are our beta users experiencing any pain, maybe stuff that we didn't realize. And we look at Bugzilla, incoming bugs, that sort of thing. But there is a sort of a relationship between the distance you go from Central to release and the number of bugs that come in, because users on Beta and release are lesser. As you get closer to release, the users are less likely to come to Bugzilla to file bugs. Bugzilla is a place that nightly users tend to be comfortable going to, because you're dealing with people who are comfortable running bleeding edge software that might break on them. And they're more comfortable reporting bugs. Like, you tend to have a lot of enthusiasts who are comfortable using Bugzilla, whereas on release that's less likely. That population is a little more like, hey, I'm just trying to use my browser here. I don't want to use your weird bug tracker. Just fix the bug. Like, that's to them. That's generally how it goes. That's the relationship I've observed, anyways. And that's not to say that release is perfect. Periodically, we'll realize that something slipped into release that shouldn't have. We recently had one where, like, old versions of Mac OS, there was like a problem with old versions, really like old unsupported versions of Mac OS, and we didn't know, because no one's running on an unsupported versions of Mac OS in our development teams or in QA. So we didn't know until we heard about it in some of our various support channels. And so we had to issue what's called a dot release. And that's whenever we land, we not crash land, we apply a patch to the release repository and spin out a 94.0.1 or 94.0.2, depending on how many dot releases happen. And we try not to do too many dot releases. There's maybe one or two. If there are 3 or more, like, something's kind of gone wrong here. But usually there's like 1 or 2, stuff that somehow snuck through. And that's, we detect those things by doing a slow rollout. We do a slow rollout on release. We hear problems. We'll halt the rollout for a second, put together the dot release, and then ship the dot release, and then continue the rollout and let everyone get to it. And when the dot release happens, sometimes we'll use that opportunity to also uplift changes that are low risk, that can ride along. If we're already doing a build, maybe we can do some ride along changes that offer some improvements for things that, we feel safe doing, that sort of thing. So I think that's all I have to say there. So yeah, release. Every 4 weeks, a new release is cut, a new major release is cut, and maybe within that time there'll be some dot releases. I believe Beta, there's like 2 a week, 2 per week. 2 betas per week are cut, something like that. So 2 builds per week. And then on nightly, it's 2 per day. And there used to be an intermediary channel called Aurora between Central and Beta. And that meant that there was an extra, I mean, it used to be 6 weeks. Instead of 4 weeks, it used to be 6 weeks of time. And even then, that was pretty radical. Like, wow, 6 weeks of time. And we had the Aurora channel. So it was from nightly to Aurora was 6 weeks. Then from Aurora to Beta was 6 weeks. And then from Beta to release was 6 weeks. So in all told, you had like, presuming you had a patch land on the very first day that of the nightly cycle, of a new release cycle, it would take 6, 12, 18 weeks to finally hit release. And nowadays, if you hit the beginning of a cycle, you've got 8 weeks. We've cut it in half. 8 weeks from landing on the first day of a cycle to being out to release. Presuming, modulo holidays, because like these are guidelines, these 4 weeks. And like periodically, especially around the winter holidays, some of the dates might get stretched or contracted. Especially if the release week happens to fall on like a public holiday, then we'll bump it by a day. Or if it's in the winter holidays, we might move it by a week. Or if it's during like a really busy time for Mozilla, like an all hands when we'd all get together when we could do that, then we might move it by a week or something. So that's how patches get landed and go out to release. Now there's some other stuff that I didn't talk about. I'm going to talk about one more thing, and that's called try. Try is another fork of the repository. And what this is supposed to do is to make it easier to land patches without, or not land patches. It's to make it possible for you to experiment with patches and see if they'd pass continuous integration were it to land on AutoLand. So if you're not sure, for example, if your patch is going to work on Mac OS and you don't have a Mac OS machine around, or if you don't have a Windows machine around, or you don't want to run the whole suite of tests yourself or something, you can push your patch to try, and it will run continuous integration on the patch, but it won't go out to Central. It's just kind of like this dumping ground of patches to try stuff out. And you can follow along to see what people are landing and try. It's usually pretty interesting stuff. Like, people are just... Oh, what's also really interesting is try is used to do linting by the fabricator stuff. So like periodically... you'll see like linting stuff happening here. It's pretty neat. I think that's all I want to say about patches. We've talked about try, we've talked about fabricator, Mozilla Unified, Central, Beta, Release, Lando. Yep. I'm sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen when I talked about that. Let me go back to my screen. Yeah, this is try, and you can see that there's like a bunch of stuff landing in try. You can check that out. But it's usually just a bunch of noise, just experimental stuff that might not ever see the light of day will land and try. Okay. What else do I want to do during the stream? We got like 20 minutes left. There's another question here. It was, how difficult was it for you to get a proper understanding of Mozilla Tree Herder in the beginning? That still looks difficult for me with all the letters and numbers on the right. It was very difficult. I remember being pretty intimidated by Tree Herder. Even the precursor to Tree Herder was actually called TBPL, Tinderbox Push Log. And let me see if we can find a screenshot of what that looked like. It had a similar UI to Tree Herder. But even before that, we had this thing called Tinderbox. And it was basically like it was just tables. It was a different representation. So this is very old school. This is, I think, from back in the Netscape days we had this. And what it would look like is like there'd be a push here. And then it would try and represent to you the jobs that are currently running, and like these are slices of time, these rows are slices of time, and time is progressing from like the past into the future. So like or like from the bottom up. So the future is here, or like this is current, and as you go down you're going further into the past. So this job, for example, it's describing a job and it ended around here, and like these jobs are ongoing, for example. And that ended up being really confusing. Like, it was a very confusing sort of system visually. And Tinderbox Pushlog was developed as an alternative, and it was much more understandable. And Tree Herder is the sort of official version of Tinderbox Pushlog. And so understanding it is difficult because there's just so many things going on. But once you get a sense of the symbols, because a lot of the issue is the fact that there are a lot of short forms for things. But the good news is that you can hover them with your mouse and get a better sense of what's going on. You can click on them and get maybe more of a description of what's happening. So for example, B, one of the things I learned early on, this was a convention from Tinderbox Pushlog. It's been maintained with Tree Herder, is that B stands for a kind of a build job. Because like each of the items listed in here is a kind of a job. A job is a task that's being performed by a machine somewhere. You know, maybe it's a build job, or it's running tests, or it's running linting. And they might not all be running on the same machine. Like, stuff can be passed around from machine to machine. It's organized by platform, so you can see what platform's doing what. And I think the color coding is also really important. Green means the job completed successfully. Blue means the job failed and is being retried. And the failure can occur for any number of reasons, like infrastructure problems. It periodically happens. Red means the test like failed completely, like something went horribly wrong. And orange means that the test is like a test failed, some kind of assertion failed. And black means that the job is underway. It's currently in progress. And gray means that the task is queued. A machine is not yet doing it, but it will soon do it. I believe that's the case. Is that the case? In progress. So I'm wrong. Gray means in progress. Black means also in progress. I don't know what the difference is between black and gray in this particular case. One of them means like, oh, no, it's not yet started. Gray means not started. Black means in progress. And you can see how long it's been running. In this particular case, this job for running WebRender ref tests has been running for 2 minutes. And Danny Colin says, that must be fun for colorblind folks. Yeah, I'm curious to know whether or not like the color choice could be made a little more accessible. And I have no idea what this would be like with a screen reader. Like if I were a developer, you know, or a sheriff using Tree Herder with a screen reader, I have no idea how usable this is. It's hard enough being sighted and not being colorblind to like interpret all of this. But if you had a screen reader, if you had a color blindness, like I don't know how I'd make sense of it. But the idea is that this gives you a sense of like what state the jobs are in, and then each one of these rows represents a particular push. So again, this is AutoLand. So this push was pushed by Emilio. The patch here, we can look at the patch if we want to pull it up. You know, we can see what it was like whenever it got merged into AutoLand by Lando. This is what the patch looked like. And then the commit message here, and it's got a link to the build. And even though it was Emilio who landed the patch, this is the name of the person who landed it. This is the name of the author. In this case, it was also Emilio. And then these are the individual jobs that were selected to run for it. Because Task Cluster, which is the underlying infrastructure that Tree Herder is the UI for, Task Cluster is smart enough to look at a patch and say, okay, I think we should run these jobs. I think we should run those jobs, that sort of thing, using like some very sophisticated machine learning stuff. So that allows us to minimize the amount of machine time being spent, you know, testing everything. Whenever you change some documentation somewhere, we don't have to run all of the ref tests or something because they wouldn't have been affected by a documentation change. I think that's all I have to say about Tree Herder. It is complicated, but there is help. If you click on help, there's like a user guide. You can like learn a lot about the like it's got a lot of, you know, interpretations for you, notations for things, and examples, a lot of built-in examples, keyboard shortcuts, which I use all the time. Let's see. Danny Colin says you can test it with the dev tools now. I presume you mean the color blindness stuff, and that's true. The accessibility dev tools allow us to see whether or not. Here, let's simulate a kind of color blindness. No green. I mean, so these come off as like a little bit. They're still distinctive. They're bolded whenever they're completed, so that helps. What about no color? Again, like the boldness helps. I think distinguish between completed and not completed. I don't and like I don't know if I'd be able to tell whether or not a job failed. So thankfully there are like ways you can filter, so I can just see the failures. So I can take away the successes and just see the failures. Oh yeah, failures end up having this sort of box around them. That helps. No blue. So all in all, for color blindness, it might not be that bad. I don't actually know. Let me know. If you are watching the stream and you have an inability to see certain colors, I'd be very curious to know whether or not you find Tree Herder usable or not. Den Shub is mentioning that, like, that's true. Every time you push to try, you get an email telling you that your push has been submitted, and the message it gives you is your try push has been submitted. It's the best. I agree. I like that message. That makes me very happy. So that was the last question that came in about Tree Herder. There was a question that asked me some like information about like stocks and stuff. I'm not going to answer that. So I've updated the I do not ask me for financial advice. What I will tell you though is if you want to ask me questions, technical questions about Firefox or any Mozilla stuff, you can let me know your questions by clicking on this link to rate the episode. Fill in a bunch of it, but at the bottom there's a section there where you can ask me a question, and if it's a technical question about Firefox or Mozilla stuff, I'll do my best to answer it during the next stream. I think I'm gonna cap the stream there. Hey, thank you so much for watching episode 270 of The Joy of Coding. I hope that was interesting, and I will see you next week. So, with that, take care. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.